I am disgusted to report today that Britain's political prisoner Lucy Connelly, the grieving mother locked up for 31 months for a singular X post later deleted on the day of the triggering Southport massacre, has been attacked behind bars by the prison staff who are meant to be protecting her. They intend to not only continue the persecution of Lucy, but terrify her. I can reveal today that Lucy Connelly has been warned about staying silent upon her release. And last Thursday, she was subjected to the most disgusting treatment behind bars at HMP Peterborough, where she was told unexpectedly that she would have to move to a different wing into a dirty cell covered in feces where someone had recently died. Now, this was a unit designated for the most violent prisoners in the jail.
We granted leave to appeal in all cases. The Thurrock Tunnels case. In August 2022, protesters occupied tunnels under the roads providing access to the industrial estate, which includes the Navigator Oil Terminal in Thurrock, Essex.
When I released that film, I knew I'd end up in there, and I also knew that it'd give them every opportunity to pull every trick they wanted to. Since the start of my activism in 2009, police raids, court cases, I actually thought when I walked out of it this time, it would be the first time since 2009 that I haven't been awaiting trial or prison. And bang, I'm awaiting trial and prison on multiple cases again now. But I've watched from the start of my activism. First of all, I saw Gert Wilders.
The courtroom erupted in shock, and so did Keir Starmer. Moments after Lucy Connelly's verdict dropped live on television, the Labour leader's calm facade shattered. The decision wasn't just a legal blow, it was a political earthquake shaking the foundations of his leadership. Tonight, we unravel how a single court ruling ignited fury, fractured trust, and sent shockwaves through the corridors of power. It started as an ordinary day in the courtroom, but the tension was far from ordinary. Lucy Connelly, a figure who has captured national attention, stood before the judge, awaiting a verdict that would ripple far beyond legal walls. The eyes of the nation were glued to the screen, watching as justice unfolded live on television. A rare spectacle in itself, charged with raw emotion and high stakes. Keir Starmer, once a barrister himself, watched too. But this was no legal proceeding behind closed doors. This was a public reckoning. As the judge delivered the ruling, the atmosphere shifted. The verdict went against expectations, and with it came a series of political consequences that few saw coming. Starmer's reaction was immediate and explosive. The composed politician, known for measured words and careful diplomacy, was caught off guard. His voice rose in frustration. His expressions hardened. For the first time in months, his carefully controlled image cracked on live TV. The Labour leader wasn't just responding to a legal decision. He was reacting to what it meant for his party, his policies, and his grip on power. Lucy Connelly's case had become a symbol of the challenges facing Starmer's leadership. It touched on issues the public feels deeply: fairness, justice, and accountability. The ruling was perceived by many as a rejection not only of Connelly's arguments, but also of the broader vision Starmer claims to represent. The impact was immediate, the stakes enormous. This was more than courtroom drama. It was political theatre with real consequences. The opposition pounced, accusing Starmer of failing to deliver justice and protect the people. Supporters scrambled to explain, but the raw emotion in the studio made excuses difficult. The moment felt real, urgent, and raw. A test of leadership that Starmer could not afford to lose. The media frenzy was instantaneous. Headlines splashed across screens, capturing Starmer's outburst and the significance of the ruling. Social media exploded with debate. Clips of his reaction were shared thousands of times within minutes, sparking heated discussions. Public trust, already fragile, felt a fresh tremor. Political analysts dissected every word, every gesture. Was this the breaking point? Was Starmer's leadership truly at risk? The answer was unclear, but one thing was certain: the court's decision had unleashed a storm that no amount of preparation could calm. This was a turning point, a moment that would shape the political landscape for weeks, if not months. As the fallout began, questions multiplied. How did the ruling align with the public's sense of justice? How would Starmer navigate the growing pressure? And most importantly, could he regain control in the face of such a brutal public setback? What followed in the hours after the ruling revealed much about Starmer's resilience and the cracks forming beneath his leadership. This was not just about law, it was about power, perception, and the unyielding spotlight that comes with leading a nation on edge. The moments after the court's decision were chaos wrapped in calm. Behind the scenes, aides scrambled to manage the fallout. The Labour Party's usual strategy of steady messaging suddenly seemed fragile, as if shaken by the force of Starmer's own reaction on live television. For many, this was an unprecedented display. A leader visibly rattled by a single ruling, and that rattling sent shockwaves far beyond the courtroom. Public response was swift and fierce. On social media, the narrative spun rapidly. Some praised Starmer for showing raw emotion, calling it a sign he truly cares. But for many more, it was a dangerous crack in the armour, a glimpse of uncertainty at a time when voters demand strength. The carefully crafted image of a composed, unshakable leader had taken a hit, and once that happens, rebuilding trust is an uphill battle. Opposition voices seized the opportunity. Conservative politicians and commentators blasted Starmer mercilessly, framing the court ruling and his reaction as evidence of failed leadership and poor judgment. They argued that the Labour leader was more focused on emotional outbursts than clear policy solutions. This framing struck a chord with parts of the public already sceptical of Starmer's promises. Even within Labour ranks, concern grew. Some MPs whispered doubts about Starmer's ability to maintain control under pressure. Internal discussions reportedly turned tense, with strategists debating how to handle the backlash without deepening the crisis. The party's traditional message of unity and strength suddenly faced an unprecedented test. But it wasn't just political rivals and party insiders reacting. Ordinary citizens began questioning what the court's decision meant for them. The case involving Lucy Connelly had tapped into wider anxieties about justice and fairness, issues at the heart of public debate. Many saw the ruling as a sign that the system is failing ordinary people. And Starmer's visible frustration seemed to confirm their fears that leaders aren't equipped to fix it. The media frenzy intensified. News outlets dissected every frame of Starmer's outburst, replaying it endlessly. Experts debated the political and legal implications, weighing in on whether this moment marked a turning point or a temporary stumble. Pundits highlighted how rare it is to see such unfiltered emotion from a leader who usually maintains strict control over his image. Far from calming the situation, Starmer's post-verdict behaviour seemed to fuel speculation about his stability and readiness to lead. Analysts warned that in today's fast-moving political climate, where moments go viral instantly, one heated reaction can define a leader's public perception far more than hours of calm speeches. In the hours following the court's ruling, Starmer's team worked overtime to shift the narrative. Carefully worded statements emphasised respect for the judicial process while reaffirming commitment to the values at stake. But the damage had already taken root. Many viewers felt that no amount of damage control could erase the impact of a leader who exploded on live TV. This crisis revealed a growing tension in British politics, the gap between carefully scripted leadership and the unpredictable emotions of real-time pressure. For Starmer, this tension came to a head in the most public way possible. On live television, with the eyes of the nation watching. As the dust settled on the initial shock, one question loomed large. How would Starmer recover? Would this moment become a turning point that galvanised his resolve, or would it mark the beginning of a deeper unravelling? The stakes couldn't be higher, and the country was waiting for the answer. The political fallout from Lucy Connelly's court decision continued to deepen as the hours turned into days. Keir Starmer's explosive reaction was dissected relentlessly, turning into a defining moment that shaped conversations far beyond the courtroom drama. What began as a legal ruling quickly morphed into a referendum on Starmer's leadership style and emotional resilience. Across news channels and social media platforms, public opinion started to shift noticeably. Many who once viewed Starmer as a steady and thoughtful alternative to the chaotic political scene began expressing doubts. The man who had built his reputation on control and precision appeared in this moment vulnerable and reactive. Traits that unsettled voters craving strength and certainty in uncertain times. For some, Starmer's outburst was a humanising moment. They saw a leader feeling the weight of the country's frustrations and rising to the challenge with genuine passion. But this perspective struggled to dominate the wider narrative. The louder, more persistent message was one of concern that Starmer's leadership might lack the calm steadiness necessary to guide the country through its mounting crises. Opposition parties capitalised heavily on this narrative. The Conservatives sharpened their criticism, painting Starmer as a man overwhelmed by pressure and quick to lose his temper. They argued this wasn't just a moment of weakness, but an indication of a fundamental flaw. A leader who struggles to handle setbacks and difficult decisions. Nigel Farage, always quick to sense political opportunity, used the incident to further his message about the failures of establishment politics. He pointed to Starmer's emotional reaction as proof that the political class is disconnected from everyday struggles, quick to crack when faced with real challenges. This framing found an eager audience among voters disillusioned with traditional politics. Inside Labour, there was no shortage of concern. Behind closed doors, senior party members debated the best way to manage the crisis and prevent it from spiralling further. Some suggested Starmer needed to show vulnerability combined with renewed focus, while others warned that too much emotion risked undermining the image of stability they had carefully cultivated. The timing could not have been worse. Britain was facing a series of complex issues, economic pressures, public service strains, and growing geopolitical uncertainties. Voters expected their leaders to appear composed and decisive. In this context, Starmer's moment of visible frustration became a focal point for wider anxieties about leadership capability. Media analysts also noted that the incident highlighted the perils of live political broadcasting. While transparency and real-time engagement are valued, they leave little room for error or hesitation. A single emotional outburst can dominate coverage and shape public perception more than months of careful policy discussion. Moreover, the ruling in Lucy Connelly's case itself became entangled in the political debate. Rather than being viewed purely as a legal outcome, it was interpreted through a political lens. Many saw it as a judgment on broader themes of justice, fairness, and political accountability. Areas that Starmer had promised to address but now appeared vulnerable on. As public trust wavered, Starmer's path forward grew more complicated. He needed to balance showing genuine empathy and passion with projecting control, and confidence. The challenge was not simply to respond to this moment, but to rebuild a narrative that had been unsettled in front of millions. At the heart of it all was a simple question. Could Starmer turn this crisis into an opportunity? Could he prove that his passion was a strength rather than a liability? The next steps would be critical, not only for his leadership, but for the future direction of British politics. In this volatile environment, every word, every gesture, every decision would be scrutinised with unprecedented intensity. The stakes had never been higher. And for Keir Starmer, the battle to regain control had only just begun. The pressure on Keir Starmer intensified as the political landscape shifted beneath his feet. The court ruling involving Lucy Connelly had become a catalyst, exposing vulnerabilities that his opponents were eager to exploit and that even some within his own party found concerning. What made this situation especially precarious was not only the ruling itself, but Starmer's highly publicised reaction. A moment of anger and frustration that broke through his usual veneers of calm professionalism. This eruption was more than just a fleeting emotional response. It was perceived as a signal, a flashpoint revealing deeper tensions within the Labour leadership. For years, Starmer had positioned himself as the voice of reason and steadiness, a leader who could bring order and clarity to a divided country. But in this moment, many questioned whether that image could withstand the real-world pressures now bearing down on him. The opposition wasted no time framing this as proof of weakness. Conservative MPs and commentators argued that Starmer's outburst was a sign he was ill prepared for the demands of leadership, painting him as a man overwhelmed by challenges rather than someone who could rise above them. This narrative gained traction quickly, adding fuel to the fire of public scepticism already simmering under the surface. At the same time, Nigel Farage continued to leverage the moment to further his critique of the political establishment. His messaging struck a chord with voters disillusioned by traditional politics, those who felt that politicians are often disconnected from the harsh realities ordinary people face. Farage portrayed Starmer's reaction as emblematic of a broader failure, leaders who crumble under pressure and are unable to deliver on promises. Within Labour's ranks, internal debates grew increasingly heated. Some party members pushed for a strategic shift, urging Starmer to demonstrate more resilience and emotional intelligence in the face of adversity. Others worried that the leader's explosive reaction might alienate voters seeking stability amid economic uncertainty and social unrest. Starmer's communications team faced the daunting task of regaining narrative control. They emphasised respect for the judiciary and the rule of law, attempting to separate the legal decision from political fallout. However, in the court of public opinion, that distinction proved difficult to maintain. The blurred lines between legal processes and political accountability made it challenging to contain the fallout. As the days passed, it became clear that the incident had lasting consequences beyond the immediate shock. Polling indicated a dip in Labour's support, particularly among undecided and swing voters, who are often crucial in tight elections. The BC studio explosion was replayed repeatedly, becoming a symbol of uncertainty rather than strength. This episode also highlighted a broader challenge faced by modern politicians: the balancing act between authenticity and control. Voters increasingly demand transparency and emotional connection from their leaders, yet political survival often depends on careful management of public image. Starmer's moment revealed the risks inherent in this delicate dance. Political commentators questioned whether this event might alter the trajectory of Starmer's leadership. Would it mark the beginning of a decline or a rallying point for renewed determination? The answer depended heavily on his response in the critical weeks ahead. For many observers, the verdict on Starmer now extended beyond policy platforms and campaign promises. It encompassed his ability to navigate crisis, maintain composure, and inspire confidence when the nation's eyes are fixed squarely on him. The Lucy Connelly ruling had turned into a test not just of justice, but of leadership itself. The political stakes could not be higher. Britain's challenges are complex and growing, and the need for steady guidance is urgent. Starmer's leadership, already under intense scrutiny, had been thrust into the spotlight in a way few could have predicted. How he managed the aftermath would shape his legacy, and perhaps the future of British politics, for years to come. As the dust from the courtroom drama settled, the long-term impact of Lucy Connelly's ruling and Starmer's explosive reaction began to reveal itself. This was no ordinary political hiccup. It was a seismic event that reshaped perceptions and raised serious questions about leadership in Britain's turbulent political climate. Keir Starmer now faced a dual challenge: repairing the immediate damage to his image while convincing a sceptical public that he was the steady hand Britain needed. This was more than a matter of optics. It was a test of political survival. In a world where social media amplifies every moment, the memory of his outburst lingered like a shadow, colouring every speech and interview thereafter. Supporters rallied to emphasise Starmer's passion and dedication, arguing that his reaction showed a leader who cares deeply and refuses to stay silent in the face of injustice. But even the most loyal found it difficult to fully erase the impression of volatility, especially when contrasted with the calm and confident personas projected by his rivals. Meanwhile, opposition parties seized on the opportunity to deepen the narrative of uncertainty surrounding Starmer's leadership. The Conservatives, emboldened by polling shifts and public discourse, intensified their attacks, questioning his ability to manage national crises and maintain unity within his party. Farage, ever the strategist, continued to frame the episode as evidence of a political establishment out of touch with the realities faced by ordinary citizens. The incident also sparked a broader debate about the nature of leadership itself. Was Starmer's emotional outburst a moment of authenticity in an era of political pretense, or a dangerous loss of control? This question divided not only politicians and pundits, but also the public, reflecting the growing complexity of what voters expect from their leaders. For Starmer, the path forward was clear but difficult. He needed to harness the energy behind his passion without letting it consume him. Demonstrating emotional intelligence became crucial, showing that he could feel deeply but also think clearly and act decisively under a pressure. Success or failure in this balancing act would likely determine his political fate. The Labour Party, watching anxiously, knew that unity and discipline would be essential in the coming months. Internal divisions, if left unchecked, could weaken their position further. Starmer's ability to inspire confidence within his own ranks as well as among the electorate would be a defining feature of his leadership going forward. Looking ahead, the political landscape remained volatile. The Lucy Connelly case and the courtroom explosion were not isolated incidents, but symptoms of wider tensions within British society, economic struggles, social divisions, and a growing demand for accountability and transparency. How Starmer responded would signal whether he was the leader capable of meeting those challenges head on. In the end, this moment was more than just a court decision or a televised reaction. It was the turning point that exposed the fragility and resilience of leadership in the modern age. Britain watched as Starmer grappled with the pressures of power, revealing strengths and weaknesses in equal measure. The question now is not just whether Keir Starmer can recover from this crisis, but whether he can transform it into an opportunity to prove that he is the leader the country truly needs. Calm in the storm, passionate without losing control, and above all, ready to lead when the stakes have never been higher. The next chapter is unfolding, and the nation's future may depend on how this story ends.